Good morning. Welcome to the Science Mind class here at CSLDallas. I'm Dr. Petra, and we are excited to have you online, especially those of you who are normally in the room who are online this morning. We are happy to be together, and we are continuing through this chapter on our relationship with this infinite reality. And really, it's the exploration of the phrase, we are made in the image and likeness of God. We are made in the image and likeness of that one infinite reality. And so over and over to explore, not that God is made in our image and likeness, but that we are made in its image and likeness. And so we have to actually explore what that is. That's what we've been doing, the nature of reality, the nature of the laws of the spiritual laws of the universe, what all of creation is doing, how that is a part of it all. And now we've been exploring, right, well, what does that mean about us if we are made in the image and likeness? So this little section that we're moving into here called Unity is a bit of a summary. It's a bit of a restatement of everything that we've been exploring before. But there are some interesting thoughts in here that I'm going to pick out that we can take a look at. So the first one is sort of the second half of this first full paragraph, where Ernest Holmes asserts that if I have one mind and you have one mind, and God has another mind, there's no way that we would ever be able to communicate. Because we would be not only separated physically, but we would be separated at the level of consciousness. And of course, I like to translate the word mind into consciousness. And so if I have a consciousness and you have a consciousness, and the infinite has a consciousness, and they're all somehow separate, the act of communing would be really challenging, because we would be forever separate from each other, and we would be forever separate from the whole. So this is what's called a priori reasoning. This is the one thing that we take on faith. It's not really provable necessarily. There's lots of ways in which there are indications that we can say, oh, look, that looks like we're all part of the one mind or the one consciousness. There's lots of things that science is beginning to reflect back to us. But the one basic thing that we take as a truism is that there is only one thing, that there is actually no separation. And that one thing we call God, or ultimate reality, or universal spirit, right? And that's the piece that we start with. And everything else that we teach or that we practice should fall out of that one place where we start. And if it doesn't, right, then we have to examine, is the premise faulty? Is our logic faulty? Is our experience somehow colored by other ideas or thoughts? So this is a thing that we take as reality, whether it's provable or not. And that is that there is actually only one thing happening. And so if we think of it as mind, or we think of it as consciousness, or we think of it as life, whatever word we use, we all share the same one. Because you can't have a oneness and then have two things, right? So this is the sort of beginning of the entire progression of understanding about the nature of reality and who we are. So then it goes on to, at the bottom of that first paragraph, we are forced to the conclusion that there is but one mind. Each individual, however, is a unique variation in the universe. No two people are alike, and yet all people are rooted in that which is identical. And of course, pardon me? Oh, sorry, we're on page 121. Yeah, we're in that first full paragraph under unity. And so, right, this is another way of saying individualized expression. I love this unique variation in the universe, rooted in this identical oneness, but of course expressing it uniquely. So then he goes on to this really, I think this is really an interesting exploration, where he goes on to talk about our self-knowing mind is our unity with the whole. It's our self-knowingness. So this is the instrument. Our self-knowingness is the instrument that perceives reality and cognizes or realizes truth. Without self-knowingness, we would simply be being, right? We would simply be experiencing life, but the ability for us to know ourselves as individuals, as these unique variations, is what allows us then to begin to perceive truth, because we can actually observe and think about and experience and intuit about our experience. All illumination, inspiration, and realization must come through the self-knowing mind in order to manifest in us. Again, I want to caution us that we don't get caught on the word mind as if it were the logical left brain. We're not talking about our brain. We're not talking about purely rational thinking, which is what we usually associate with mind. So let's continue to translate mind into consciousness. All illumination, inspiration, and realization must come through the self-knowing consciousness in order to manifest in us. And so it is our ability to see ourselves and to see that we are made in, explore that we are made in the image and likeness of the one that allows illumination, inspiration, and realization to come through. Because we aren't simply being. We're actually also knowing, realizing, and doing. Right? We're all of those things. And so this self-knowingness is what becomes so critical. And to a certain extent, it's Ernest Holmes's words that we might substitute for enlightenment, awakening, becoming conscious, getting off autopilot. These are all different ways of saying self-knowingness, our ability to be the witness within our own consciousness, which is, of course, a significant teaching that comes to us from the East, to be the observer, which comes out of the scientific world, and to see who and what we are and who and what is going on. So this self-knowing consciousness, which is different, while we say that this table or this chair is also a part of the one because it's created. It's a creation. It can't be outside of the one. The chair is not self-knowing. And the whole scale, the range of beingness or aliveness, as Troward would say, right? There comes a point somewhere where that self-knowingness wakes up. So these are Ernest Holmes's words. This is what he uses, but we could substitute a lot of words that we might have read in other spiritualities or in other people's teachings, right, to try to get a hold of what this self-knowingness is. Vision, intuition, and revelation proclaim themselves through our self-knowing mind. Vision, intuition, and revelation, right? These words tell us that he's not talking about purely our rational, linear brain. He's not talking about our analysis, although that's not left out. And so over and over and over and over again, I want to impress upon us that we don't think about thought and mind as purely cerebral, purely head, right? I hear a lot of that in the science of mind now. Oh, I'm not going to be in my head, I'm going to be in my heart. And yet further on, he talks about the head and the heart, right? Psyche is the head and the heart, and actually our bodies as well. It's the wholeness of who we are. So our self-knowingness is actually something that's revealed through the wholeness of us, right? It might be an intuitive thought. It could be a feeling we have in our body. It could be a revelation that we have in meditation. It could be a realization that we have while we're carefully studying something. We have that aha moment, do you see? And all of that is included in self-knowingness. It could be that our bodies intuitively know, don't do that, whatever that is, right? All of this self-knowingness is the self-knowingness of our consciousness, which is, again, a wholeness. If everything is a wholeness, if it's all part of the one. So I want to really caution all of us to get overly invested in this dichotomy between head and heart, or the dichotomy between head and heart and soma, body, semantics, kinesthetic. If we are careful in our reading of the science of mind, we'll understand that it always means the totality of us. And otherwise, these words would not be used. Vision, intuition, and revelation proclaim themselves through our self-knowing consciousness, I would say. And this is what all the saints and saviors and Christs and sages have proclaimed and perceived. So, this is, I think, one of the biggest errors we make in the science of mind when we say, oh, thoughts are things, or change your thinking, change your life, right? We have to remember that all of these are based on an older use of our language, 100 years old now, 150 years old now. And of course, language shifts, and we use different words, and other words come into fashion that we use. We learn new things, right? And we learn and express and experience new awarenesses. So we want to allow our understanding to expand. Every evidence of human experience, all acts of kindness and mercy have interpreted themselves through our self-knowing mind. So even our actions, right? Being kind, being merciful, walking in grace, all of these things come from our ability to know ourselves, and therefore to experience and know this oneness. All that we consciously know, say or think, feel or believe, hope or long for, fear or doubt, is some reaction of the self-knowing mind, right? All of it is part of who we are as what the term I like to use, spirit humans. We're not just spirits. We're not just spiritual beings having a human experience, right? I think that's more than that. I think we're spirit humans because it's a oneness. It's a wholeness. And we don't actually say that our spiritual self is more important or better than our human self. What we want to do is align them, bring them into alignment, and live in a directionality, right, where our causal spiritual nature is impelling us forward, and then our human nature is expressing and experiencing and feeding back. So that we too are a oneness. And if we split our spirit and our humanity, do you see we've now created a fundamental duality within ourselves? So everything, all that we know, consciously know, say or think, feel or believe, hope or long for, fear or doubt is some reaction of the self-knowing mind. Now, we do have subjective memories and unexpressed emotions we feel, but to the self-knowing mind alone comes realization. Because what is in the subjective is always in the past. It's always a memory, right? It's the re-experiencing of something that is in the past. And it's our self-knowingness that can look at it and remember those lovely conversations we had about deductive and inductive reasoning, right? Realization is the ability to ask, is this the truth? Truth with a capital T. Is this in alignment with what I know to be true about spiritual reality? And therefore we can inquire into the truth of it so that it stops becoming unconscious autopilot responses, but we make it conscious. We bring it to our awareness, to our self-knowingness, and we can say, yes, I like that. No, I don't. Yes, I choose to behave that way. No, I don't. Yes, I'm going to continue to think that, or no, I'm not. That's not the spiritual truth of me. Do you see? So we have those, but it is in our ability to know ourselves and to see those things that then comes the realization, the revelation, the inspiration. Without this capacity to consciously know, and again, no, please don't get hung up on, oh, I intellectually know something, but I don't really believe it. Oh, do you know, what do you mean? Right? Remember, we're talking about something beyond that. So don't get stuck there. Without this capacity to consciously know, we might use or consciously realize, we would not exist as an expressed being. And so far as we are concerned, would not exist at all. I think that's a fascinating statement. Perhaps we would not exist as the spirit humans that we are. We would be more like a tree or a flower, just being and doing, right? Without self-awareness, just being. Certainly aware, certainly conscious, but not in the same way. So it is the self-knowing mind of us, the self-knowing consciousness of each of us proclaims itself in every thought, deed, or act. Thought, deed, or act. Right? Not just in our revelation not just in our meditation, and is truly the only guarantee of our divinity. I think these are just really interesting statements to really chew on. Like, really? Is that, What, is there anything else that guarantees our divinity? Maybe what it guarantees is our recognition of our divinity, our realization of our divinity. Or maybe without that, would we say we are not divine? I don't know. I'd go so far. Do I say the tree is not divine? Is it not part of the whole? Right? We don't have to take every statement that Ernest Holmes makes and go, oh, that's the truth. Right? We have to chew on it. What is trying to be said here? What is the point he's making? Or is he just asserting something? Some of these statements, I'm like, I'll have to think about that for a while. That's what I do. I then have to go away and chew on it a little bit. What does that mean? So, of course, in italics, it is our unity with the whole or God on the conscious side of life, and is an absolute guarantee that we are a center of God consciousness in this vast whole. It is our unity with the whole, or God, on the conscious side of life, and is an absolute guarantee that we are a center of God consciousness in this vast whole. She says, So that rung true for you somehow, right? So, if we were not part of the one, remember we started this whole thing with there's not your mind and my mind and God's mind, right? This vast whole, one mind or one consciousness. And it is this unity, this oneness, our consciousness, your consciousness, God's consciousness, on the conscious side of life, right? The ability to self-realize this And this is the absolute guarantee that we are a center of God consciousness. This is how we know the truth of who we are. Because we are able to do this. Because we can perceive it. Because we can experience it. Because we can realize, intuit. Right? Which is why we have so many spiritual practices that invite us to explore it, examine it, experience it, and act as if it were so that we can prove it to ourselves. We will say then that in spirit we are one with God. Then we're going to go on and talk about the law. So let's stop there. Self-conscious consciousness, self-knowing consciousness is the guarantee. Not that it guarantees us wholeness as if we're not part of the wholeness until we experience it, but it's the guarantee because it shows us that this is true. Right? It shows us that this is true. It doesn't, whether you believe it or not, exactly. That's exactly right, right? And whether you actually know it or not. It is in the revelation of this that we recognize this wholeness and that we can actually state that we are one with that wholeness, that we are part of that wholeness. However we want to say it in our dualistic language. All right, we're going to stop there. Joseph, we're going to say good morning to Joseph. Ryan is out on vacation for a couple weeks. Well-deserved vacation in Spain and in Greece, having a fabulous time. So Joseph is manning the station here. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning, Dr. Peter. Thank you guys for coming out today. This is an interesting conversation. There's a few ways you can join. If you're here in the room, you can simply raise your hand and myself or Richard will bring you a microphone. If you'd rather not be on camera, you can just take a seat over here to my left. For you guys joining us on Zoom, you can definitely tap the raise your hand icon, and at that time I'll ask you to unmute your mic and join us. If you're on Facebook, type your questions or comments into the chat and you can join. Let's get it kicked off.
All right, comments, thoughts, what has been stirred for you? And how do you realize, how do you experience your self-knowing consciousness? Okay, we have a comment here. Hi, Ross.
Does this require language? You meet animals, and you know they've got awareness. Mm-hmm. And you know they've got personalities. And the question that keeps coming up for me is, as a spirit body, do I require language to be at this level of I can't get the words out.
Yeah, I think I know what you're asking, Ross, and it's it is the deep question of, what does it mean to be self-aware? Of course, yes. We understand that consciousness is everywhere and consciousness is conscious. So we look into the eyes of our pets, we talk to our flowers, and we know that they respond, right? And we know that there is an awareness. And so with the Hindus, we do actually, if it's all one, then everything is conscious. There is that sense of self-knowing that one wonders how much does the pet know that it itself is somehow creating this experience of life, or is it just being in the experience of life, right? And so it's an interesting thought. One wonders if perhaps besides communicating with others, it is the advent of language, because how else would you be able to explore for yourself whether or not you are self-aware? How else would you be able to express, even in your own consciousness, what's actually going on, right? Because the pure experience of it, which we have, and we have when we're in the flow, and we have when we're in meditation, we're really in beingness. And we don't always realize or are aware of what's going on. We're simply in the flow. And it takes that moment of stopping and that little bit of gap that we talk about in meditation, the witness, the observer, to be able to see, oh, I'm in the flow. Oh, how did I get in the flow? Can I be in the flow more? What would I need to do to be more in the flow? All of that requires an ability to examine, to have an intuition about it and recognize that intuition.
In words.
Well, I don't know that words are required unless you want to share it with somebody else.
Okay, I get that.
Right? Can we have the experience and know it? I mean, yeah, it's a great question. I think actually we can, but then to actually be able to examine it, somehow we have to be able to even express it to ourselves, not just feel it. It's a great question. I think we need the language so that we can communicate it, so that we can share with others.
Perfect sense.
Right? Good. Okay. Comment here, comment there, comment there. So, it's just online, Carmen. And then we'll come up here to Willie, and then we'll go back there. Here, we're going to come up here to Willie. I saw her hand first, and then we'll come back here. Go ahead, Joseph.
Looks like we have a question or comment on Zoom.
Good.
Marjorie, can you unmute
Hey,
your
Marjorie,
mic and
come help
join us?
out this conversation. I know you have something really valuable to say. These are the hard things to talk about.
Yes, good morning. These are hard things to talk about. So I think we started out with the whole premise that you started out with is we accept on faith. And to me, as I understand faith, the opposite of faith is certainty. So faith itself, there's a certain amount of uncertainty built into it for me, because otherwise you can just prove it, So I think that some of this, to me, when you're talking about consciousness and knowingness and wholeness, I think that the wholeness includes, so to me, I don't know how else to say it, to me, non-duality includes duality.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which just makes your brain explode, right?
Wholeness includes the notion that wholeness is not something that is complete.
Yes.
Or something that you can point to and say, okay, this is it.
Right. It's not static.
It leaves out, and so the whole thing about consciousness or first cause or spirit, source, God, whatever words we want to use, it's not something that we can actually know. It's something that is the mystery, and that it is always still evolving.
Right.
And so, wanting to prove it to ourselves. Yes, I understand that part of it, and that's important, but at the same time, I want to be able to surrender, first of all, to that aspect of myself that I don't know and cannot know, because it's the shadow, and it's always with me, and I actually love my shadow as I love my light. And then that aspect of spirit that is the mystery.
Yes.
Always being revealed. And so my memory is basically like, I've heard it referred to as an echo of the future. And so it's like, so Jesus spoke of himself, I am remembrance. I am remembrance. So all of these kinds of things are floating in and out coming in and out of my brain,
Right.
my mind, and my heart as I'm listening to this conversation, and it's just fascinating.
Good.
I'm just surrendering to it all, just allowing it to all come in, and not necessarily needing to know or to understand it or to believe it or to trust it. I just allow it to be as it is, and just let it come through me as much as I can.
I love that, Marjorie. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think we do at our peril forget that there is a transcendent reality that is the mystery. And we are never going to experience all of it or know all of it. There's no question about it. And there's that constant dualism in reality, right? Directive, receptive. Use the law, surrender to the presence. Over and over and over again. And that is what Ernest Holmes calls the dual unity. And the moment that we're in expression, we have this constant reality that it's always, the wholeness is always two sides of the coin, or maybe 10 sides of the dodecahedron. Is that the right word? All sides of the, and there's something so wonderful about that. And I love that you talked about the shadow, and right, of course, and Carl Jung talked about the golden shadow. It's not just the crap that's in there. It's all the disowned parts of ourselves, which is the part of us that is unwilling to recognize that we are spirit and form, that we are actually the microcosm of the macrocosm, that we are actually creators. That's in our shadow just as much when we say, well, I'm just a human, what do you expect? So this mystery, this transcendent mystery is so powerful. And that's why I love that he uses these words: intuition, vision, revelation, realization. Are all that part of it. And then we're going to go on next to the law. Then we get to choose what we're going to do with it. What do we personally, as individualized expressions, what our unique variation of the universe, what are we doing with that? What are we choosing? Where are we going with it? Right? All of that then becomes the fun of it. That's the part where then we get involved. So, and it's challenging. We never want to forget that every time we talk about something that looks like it's a dualism, there is truth to that, but it is the paradox is that is part of the oneness. Beautiful. All right.
Okay, I
Hi,
really
Willie.
wasn't. Hi, I'm Willie. And I wasn't even sure when I raised my hand that I had anything to say. But back to the language.
Yes.
And we're focused here on our relationship to the whole, but the language thing really is interesting, because you can't say that the trees don't communicate with each other and they don't have language, or maybe they have language that we don't understand.
They definitely do.
But they don't have, well, we don't know what they have because we can't know what they have.
But we're learning. We're definitely learning,
yeah.
right? We're definitely seeing. And again, just because we say something isn't self-knowing does not mean we're not robbing it of, that we're robbing it of its awareness.
Yes.
It's being, it's consciousness. But trees don't get up and walk, and don't get up and say, well, I don't like to be here. They aren't designed necessarily to make conscious choices. This branch is going in the wrong place, so I'm going to drop it. Those feel as though they seem to be more instinctive patterns that are already developed within the way a tree grows. And so if it runs into a rock wall, it will stop pushing the limb out this way. If it's too much in the shadow, it'll reach for the light. But is it deciding to reach for the light the way that we might? Or is this just the automatic response of the way it's designed, the very intelligence of its own being and its own consciousness? Right? And so again, not to rob creation of its beauty, magnificence, mystery, wonder, all the things that it can reflect back to us. But clearly there is something different about us. And we should not pretend that there isn't. Or we wouldn't be making the mess in the world that we are, quite frankly. Trees don't make mess. Dolphins don't make messes. They don't, gorillas don't make messes. All the things that we think of as being very close to us in terms of this, consciousness and awareness and self-awareness. But we clearly do make messes. And so, so there's something different that is being explored here. Please say your name.
Good morning. My name's Esmeralda,
Hi, Esmeralda.
and this is my first time visiting. It's funny because earlier this week, life is pretty challenging, and I read somewhere where it says we're spiritual beings in a human experience, and long story short, I did grow up in a very religious Christian home, so just knowing or what I learned, has kind of helped me in my life, But then once I became an adult, I started exploring different religions, and honestly, I am into theology. I guess that's just like the OCD in me. But when you mentioned God consciousness, I was talking about that earlier this week because, okay, so I'm going to use the Bible, okay? Jesus, he was an example of having Christ consciousness.
Right, absolutely.
Which is like God consciousness, And to each their own on their perspective towards Jesus. I'm only using him just because if you read the stories of what he did, he was a good example of a good human being that came here for a good cause, and I'm not saying that I want to become like him, but I do want to follow his footsteps.
Absolutely.
On, like the examples that he
Yeah.
did. And to me, because we live in times where there's a lot of hate, a lot of diversity, just so on with the negative aspects of it. I think it's very important now to just really be spiritually in tune because it does help with real life challenges,
Yes.
and then also to just having that God consciousness helps you with decision makings,
Absolutely.
And me, I'm very about self-awareness, just because we live in times also where there's a lot of selfish people and they're not mindful or understanding of someone else, So I just want to read this verse just because it helps me, but I want to share it.
Okay, beautiful.
So it's 1 Corinthians chapter 13, 4 to 8. And it says, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud, it does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. So if you're scared, the opposite of fear is love. to me.
Always,
So
absolutely.
just with
Yep.
love, it'll overpower everything. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Esmeralda. And of course, wouldn't it be lovely if we could all really stand in that place, right? And that one of the primary goals of our spiritual journey is to be that centered, that we're not fooled by the outer world, we're not fooled by what's said, we're not fooled by the experiences, and we keep coming at life from the place we decide, which is oneness. And oneness can, to my way of thinking and experience, can only outpicture in love. Because if there's a oneness, we're all a part of the same thing. And that's, to me, the obvious fallout of that is the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because we're all one. And when we are expressing hate or division, right, it's as if we're beating up our own arm, right? And so it's so beautiful. And of course, we all have to strive for that, don't we? We're constantly striving to stay in that place of being spirit human, which means that our spirit is the causal place, that we're choosing love even if at the moment we don't feel it. we're still choosing it, right? Beautiful. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Carmen, and I had experienced something this week. I realized when I'm in my present moment and when I'm not. And at this moment, I was in my present moment, and what you're talking about, Petra, I was actually looking at my story. And way back when I was going to school, I had like a vision of how I wanted my life to be, what I wanted for my kids, because my kids were actually living in my story. And this week I realized everything I asked for, I have. I have the home that I asked for. I have the job I have for it, but it was mostly about the hours, making sure I was available and accessible to my kids. And I have that. I always had it. And the lifestyle that I'm living. And that's something I have visioned before I even started school. And I have it now, and it made me think about, like, I am living what I asked for. I have everything that I asked for. I'm in a good neighborhood. My kids went to a good school. It's safe. I had no problems. And it's something that I asked for, and I didn't even realize it.
Yes.
Until last week, and I graduated in 2008. And I have everything that I
Isn't that a lovely awareness?
Yes, I'm like, I have it.
Right.
Everything.
Right. Beautiful. And then we have to ask ourselves, so why am I living in the old story? Why am I behaving or pretending or thinking as if I don't?
No, yes, and so that's another thing that came and said, so what stories are you still living from back then that's still showing up today? And some things that need to change. So
Yeah.
it was basically showing me what I asked for, but some of the things that I asked for then may not be relevant now or
Yes,
relevant anymore
absolutely.
now.
Right,
So,
because
so am I still, that story needs to end.
Yes.
I need to start a new one now.
yes.
And so that's another part that showed me too, is that some of the things that were needed then are not
Yeah.
needed now. So
Beautiful. Good for you. Yeah, and I love that. And so this is the really interesting sort of juxtaposition between the directive, the creative, the co-creative process, and our ability to pay attention to how we're perceiving reality. Right? Again, another one of these dual unities. That we are, on the one hand, we do have to change our perception of what's going on. Because we don't realize that we manifested something, and here we are, and yet we're still or whatever it is, right? So we change our perception, and we see it different, so we experience it different. And we then also work on creating things, manifesting things, having life move forward. Both of these things are happening simultaneously. And it's important, it's so important that we continually work to expunge either or from the way in which we're moving in the world. Either I'm receptive or I'm directive. Either I'm changing my perspective or I'm being creative. I think changing my perspective, I think all you're doing is changing your perspective. No. What you have to do is use the law and create. Do you see? We're making it an either or. You have to just surrender to the mystery. No, you have to manifest your life. Okay, we've presented it to ourselves as an either or. It's always both and. Sometimes we need to have that moment of awareness, of realization. We have to shift our perspective, shift our story. And then it's like, oh, wait, but maybe I want to manifest something a little different. Oh, boom, we've just moved now into co-creation, into the manifestation process, right? And so this is a dance. And again, we want to mature our spirituality so we stop needing to be right. The better way is XYZ. What you really should do is that. No. What we want to do is become agile with all of our inspiration, all of our skills, all of our awareness, so that we're present to the moment. What does this moment call for? It calls for intuition and realization. Oh, it calls for action. It calls for decision-making and creation, right? Do you see that we're engaged in all of it. So we don't get overly stuck on one particular idea or way or, right? Except for, I would invite you to get stuck on that we are all one, and that that's the place we're coming from, and our goal is always to come from that, right? And to me, that changes everything. We're able to love, we're able to forgive, we're able to see truth, we're able to speak truth, we're able to speak our word for co-creation, right? All of those things become available because we've chosen to believe that this is to understand and experience this is the way life works. So play with it this week, right? Just examine it, play with it, see what's available to you. We're going to go on in. So this was all about us, the overarching wholeness and oneness. Now, the next portion of this really invites us to reiterate that we are one with the law. It can be one of the most annoying parts of this whole philosophy, right? And so we don't always like it, but there's something really valuable and useful to explore. So thanks for joining us. Have a beautiful week, and we will see you during the week, or we'll see you next Sunday. All right. Bye for now. Yay. Thank you, everybody.